Okay, good. Now, okay, so I'm going to start. So in every story, the thing that I learned along the way was, and I didn't realize this, there are three types of main characters in every story, which just baffled me. And if you don't know that going in, you have no idea, how to create your story because it's really essential that what kind of character, and it's really, really liberating when you realize this because then as soon as you realize what are the three types of characters, it actually, when you're thinking about a story, you realize, wow, that's my character is this one. And then you start realizing where your story can go and how you can create your story. So for basically, every main character, there's three of them, right? So for Rocky, for Angela from the Watchmen series, Ben from The Graduate, and Evelyn from Everything Everywhere All at Once. All four of these characters are protagonists, the ones that most people always hear about. They are flawed. That's what a protagonist has to be, a flawed character that transforms and changes by the end of the story. Okay. And so these four characters, Remy from Ratatouille and Wednesday from her show and Axel Foley from Beverly Hills Cop and of course Luke from the first Star Wars, these all are not protagonists. These are antagonist heroes, I call them. They are not flawed and they change the world. So they change the world around them. They change the characters as well as big sense of the way the world views their philosophy at the beginning. So there needs to be a protagonist within their story, but that's basically it. They force change, and the antagonist isn't normally, doesn't always have to be the villain. So the antagonist hero is still a main character. So for these four characters, you have Michael from The Godfather, the original Godfather, Red from Shawshank Redemption, and Woody from Toy Story, and Ripley from the first Alien. These are antagonists. Are these antagonists? Well, Michael definitely, forces change. He's very much an antagonist in the first Godfather. Woody, does stuff to kind of force his hand in certain case, we'll talk about. Red is not an antagonist. Ripley is not, is more of an antagonist, right? So are they protagonists? Well, Michael transforms. He changes. He is not flawed at the beginning, but he changes and becomes a cold-blooded killer by the end of the movie. Red is definitely the protagonist. Woody has protagonist elements where he learns, he needs to change, and Ripley is not at all a protagonist. She's 100% antagonist. So what type of character is this? I mean, basically, they're a combination. They can be both protagonists and antagonists, the elements of who they are, and you'll see as I pitch. But what these characters are called are dormant heroes. And this is the most fascinating character when I discover them because they are living their dream. So both the antagonist and the protagonist hero are searching for that dream, right? So whatever that dream is, they force change so that they can come get it, and they change the world, and they obtain their dream. Or as a protagonist, they change their flaw and they become transformed, and therefore they can capture their dream. But the dormant hero is living their dream at the beginning of the movie, and it's taken away and they have to get it back. So it's a really fascinating character that we're going to talk about coming up, but they're really just heroes. They all have the same facets. They all have the same, traits that I'm going to go through, but they're just all heroes. That's what I call them, to make it a lot simpler than saying main character, trying to determine what they are. Because again, nobody who's reading your screenplay or watching the movie is going to, there's not going to be a disclaimer saying this is a protagonist or this is an antagonist or a dormant hero. They're just going to watch the story. So this is just for you, but it's really essential to know this. So the hero, always has a want. The want is, a physical goal. And the want is usually a very global, kind of not a hugely interesting thing. It's not something that's easily depicted in just a simple, walk to somewhere and open the door. It's like in Star Wars, it's basically the survival of the rebellion. It's like kind of global. And that's why there's those three steps that we talked about in the last meetings. And then there's the need. The need is definitely deeper. It could be wanting a connection, needing a connection with somebody, needing self-respect or needing self-love, or needing to learn that there's some kind of greatness in you. It's very personal, it's internal, and it's more of an emotional one. And then the belief is the values, the core values. So it's always easy, just that's why I like to make this very, easy. They're all nouns, the want, the need, and the belief. So your core values. And then there's the dream. The dream is really deeply emotional because it's that idealistic dream. And we all understand when we all have dreams and things that we're hoping for, and it's connected to the character's passion. So it's almost like their identity, with Remy from Ratatouille and cooking, and there's Rocky and boxing. I mean, it literally is, who they are as characters. So that's very emotional. It's that idealistic dream. So they all have it. And so it doesn't matter if it's a dormant, hero, or an antagonist hero, or a protagonist hero. They all have these traits. And so now let's go into the structure of how to sort of determine what these are. And I can talk about a little bit more detail. So we'll just focus on Act 1. Because really, Act 1 is the only thing that changes. What's really fascinating is both, all three, templates, the protagonist, the antagonist, or the dormant hero, all the from Act 2 on are exactly the same. And it's really fascinating. It's really Act 1. Act 1 is so essential to what gets the character to go off on the adventure. So for the protagonist hero, you always want to have your mainstream way, and the world view that's overbearing, that mainstream everybody believes in, for that basic idea, the right way, what they have to learn, that has to be connected to their belief system, and then of course their want, need, and dream that we talked about. The theme, which we talked about before, is the hero will earn their dream when they can commit to their belief. So that belief system has to be in line with that right way, when they can commit to it. When Luke commits to the fact that he has the force in him, or whatever it is for the, depending on which character. And then we name Act 1 the stable world. It's just stable. They're just getting by. You have the key event, which could be anything, a personal event, graduation, the bicentennial after World War II, whatever that is to connect with the story. And the beginning, whatever that opening image is, doesn't always have to be done when you're creating your template, but it's always nice to sort of create that almost like a postcard image, or it could be a scene that sort of lets you know the state of the world at the very beginning. And then the my world was, that's on the bottom there. That's just what the world is in the view of the protagonist. And then it's always the same with protagonists. The protagonist gets by suppressing their dream. They decided it's too much trouble for whatever reason. The mainstream way has, held them down. And this is also the template is, again, they're in the middle, because the positive, being happy up here, being sad down here, positive energy, it's all emotion, so when the character is happy and the character is doing well, it's up in the upper side. When they're doing poorly, it's in the bottom. So the mainstream is keeping them down, and it's just easier. It's just, they're going to put it aside. That dream is way off in the distance. And again, like we talked about with the car, the dream is what keeps the character alive. So that dream is way in the distance, whether or not they're even trying. Like Rocky was zero. He was boxing, but he was not trying for his dream of being a great boxer. But it was still alive. And then that brings up the dress as expected. The character dresses as the mainstream way tells them to. So Rocky's, it was really brilliant how they did it, because Rocky's basically said that he is a bum. He's a street thug working for a loan shark, and he wore the outfit, the leather jacket. He wasn't dressed as a boxer. He was dressed as what the mainstream way, with the world's how the world saw him. And the right way is sort of keeping the character. So the things that are pushing the character down to the negative are pushing them up to the positives. The right way is in line with the protagonist. So it kind of keeps them up, keeps them afloat, at least in the middle ground. Their belief system is lined up with the right way, but they won't commit to it. You want to learn that early on. And there's a belief guide that is sort of believes in this philosophy of, that's connected directly to the right way, and they're the ones that sort of guide the main character. Then we have the dream moment. We have the need trigger, the character that remind the character, or just an object, or anything, something that they see on the news. It could just be anything that lets the audience, or lets the character, kind of reminds them that what they don't have that they really need, and that lights their fire. And a fire burns. With the burn is their flaw. And then we introduce what their need is. And then you introduce the need guide. And the need guide is a character who needs essentially the same thing, or whether it's a love interest and it's getting a connection between the main character and the need guide, or it could be a character, a family member that's trying to get the main character and their parents to have a connection. There's all this stuff that the need guide can do, and they're an essential character. And then the theme, it's just a hint. It's always fun to come up with that, so that you're not, hitting the audience over the head with what the theme is. It's got to be a very subtle thing that the main character or the protagonist actually ignores, maybe hears, but definitely does not understand. And there's a warning to the big, inciting incident, the out of the blue moment. The character continues on without heeding that warning, or even, again, it's almost like the theme noticing it. And then that's when the out of the blue moment comes, which is like an offer for in a lot of ways, it's an offer essentially to get the dream for the main character. Whereas in Star Wars, it's going to give Luke the chance to be a hero. In Rocky, the out of the blue moment gives him a chance to fight for the heavyweight championship, which will give him a chance to be a great boxer. And the want guide is a character who wants that exact thing. They don't want it for the same reasons as the main character, but they're usually in line with, they want the same thing. Obi-Wan is that character in Star Wars. He wants to get, he wants, the rebels to be safe, and he wants to get R2 to Alderaan, and he wants to bring Luke to train him as a Jedi, and so he wants Luke to do the same thing, but not for the same reasons. And then right away, you got the aftermath. That's the moment when the character knows the dream is now possible. Luke knows it's possible he could be a hero. Rocky for sure knows it's possible that he's could have a chance to be a great fighter, and on and on. All these characters. It's an amazing thing. And again, this is just something you can add to as you're almost like a checklist as you're creating your story. So I put a little strip there of the dream, and they have that thought, Rocky, that, do I just keep it safe and stay to the place that's causing the fire, meaning I don't go after my dream where it's safer. It hurts, but I won't make a fool of myself if I fail, is basically the idea. And you see it all in Rocky's face, in particular. And then you have the want. Do I go after that want, which is essentially going to bring me my dream? And they always say no. Most of it's just a moment of no, I'm fine. I'm going to just live out my life and not take any more risk. And that's when the mainstream way comes down hard. I mean, really hard. And you introduce the wrath of the villain. I mean, this is either the villain, the villain's minions, like in Star Wars. Luke's family is murdered. He loses his whole family, and there's all kinds of, just essentially, what is the strongest force that the mainstream way can come down on the main character within the context of that story. And this is where it gets really fascinating. So then that sparks that fire. So in the case of Evelyn in Everything Everywhere All at Once, she has an opportunity. She literally, in Everything Everywhere All at Once, there's literally a moment, because she's looking at different universes. She can see the past. She can see these future, what her other basic the other Evelyns and other universes, which was fascinating during the spot, and she decides to go no. But then when the Deirdre character, who she thinks is this evil, that she saw here, is this evil henchwoman coming to kill her or something, and she knows she has to fight. That's what her want guy told her. And her father, it's all about not meeting expectations is the mainstream way, is telling her he's disappointed at her all in the same time. And when you go through, I'll be showing you in future videos the Everything Everywhere All at Once one, because it's a fascinating template. Is everything's coming down so hard and it lights their fire. The fire is, for her, it's regret of what she could have done, but instead she chose family and all the things that she could have accomplished. And she's been told in this section, both the want and in this the out of the blue moment and the aftermath, that she's possibly the chosen one, the most powerful. I mean, so she has a chance, instead of this regretful life, she has a chance to be this unbelievable hero way beyond her wildest dreams. And this fire it sort of tells the main character that they just don't like that feeling. It's like they've given up on it again here when they say no, and then this is when they subconsciously accept it. And she turns around and she punches Deirdre. Essentially, she's the wrong Deirdre. She just punched an IRS agent, right? So now that's reckless, and then the main character ends up at rock bottom. Okay, this is when Rocky yells at Mickey, who shows up to ask him to be his, if he wants him to be his trainer. And Mickey's the one that gave up on him, was ridiculing him. And then also he says in his rant, and Rocky's rant is the reckless moment about how everybody, he's going to get his ass kicked. He's going to make a fool of himself. He's a bum. My house stinks. All that stuff. He's just being reckless. And then Mickey leaves. He's at rock bottom. This is a shorter one, but this is essentially that outburst. And this moment here is the character subconsciously accepting. And it's accepting in a believable way. The audience does not want, you never want the audience to go, oh yeah, right, that would never happen. You want to believe it. And this is that great moment. And especially for protagonists who's given up on their dream and basically is just living in this stable world. And, just kind of grayed out. It's just that they're just living this blah life. And now they have this moment. Why would they just quickly just go, yep, I'll do it? And then it's kind of flat. You want this big moment, and then that first step is introduced, whether it's just getting trained by Mickey. It's just a simple thing. I'll just go through the motions of getting trained. It's not like I want to be a heavyweight champion or whatever. It's just that simple way to sort of get the character into the adventure begins. So now, and also I like to put this down here because they are trapped. It just sort of, it's almost like, when a car loses its tire and it's just stuck. There's no way they can go back. They're just stuck there, and they can take on this new thing and be lifted out of that funk. And it's always the need. The need is definitely either in the character's mind. Rocky wants self-respect or whatever it is, and that dream is a reminder. Put a slash there, and so that's why they're doing it. Now, the next one is get rid of that. So the protagonist is essentially the same as the antagonist, and you'll see here, but I just kind of color coded it differently. So what's different about the antagonist hero is it's very similar if you look at him. Is the hero in the protagonist is the hero gets by suppressing their dream. They just, which is essentially the dream is connected to their passion. So it's kind of suppressing who they are as a person for whatever reason, whatever it is. And in the antagonist hero, the hero gets by sneaking their dream. So they're it's kind of like living two lives. So I put here dressed as expected, and then normal, meaning just who they are, like their natural self. If in different movies, it could be Ratatouille. Dressed as expected is Remy walking on all fours, like a real rat for his dad and for the rat world and for humans and all that. And then normal is him walking on his feet. Normal for him, it's his true self. So I just kind of split them up. It depends on your story where it happens. But what's really interesting is that the same color as the reckless color. The character is living this reckless double life. I mean, Remy is going into a human kitchen to watch TV and to follow his passion, cooking and everything. But it's like one of the most risky things you could ever do as a rat because you will get killed. And there's all kinds of reminders and everything. And the belief system for an antagonist hero, because they're not flawed, they already have this belief system, but the world doesn't accept it. So what they won't do is they won't be themselves. So Remy is perfect because he is a rat. So he believes he should be like humans and be in a human kitchen and do everything the way Gusteau, his idol, does. But he just won't be himself because he can't be himself. It's a brilliant screenplay, a brilliant movie because you really want the audience to realize why he can't. In Star Wars, Luke is also an antagonist hero, and it's a different, a little bit different structured, but it's, he's introduced like somewhere around here, but that doesn't matter. It's still all the elements are still close together, and he wants to be a hero. He's you believe that he's selfless and heroic and wants to go out there and do that, but he doesn't, can't be himself. He won't be himself because of his uncle. So it makes sense why. They still have the fire, that trigger, all these things still happen. There's still something they're not getting, or that they need that they're not getting. There's still a dream moment. All these moments are still exactly the same. The only difference is what they're doing is not just living life kind of suppressing. They're actually trying to sneak that thing that they're passionate about. So for Luke, it's when R2 shows up that he realizes there's a message from a princess who might know about the rebellion and all the things he's hearing from the distance because he's on this farm, like this faraway planet. And it's really, wish fulfillment. And it's like, wow, I want to hear more about it. So he takes R2's restrainers off. So, and R2, who's a really smart robot, says, if you take my restrainers off, I'll give you this message. And he doesn't do it. So that's Luke's first kind of risky step. And this is interesting. The want, it's the out of the blue moment for a protagonist is actually has to be out of the blue, and it has to be something that sort of disrupts that stable life, as opposed to, I didn't talk about this, as opposed to the static world I call the antagonist. And static meaning the world if they look at the protagonist world, if they were to suppress their dream, is static. It's just static. There's nowhere to go. So that's why they start sneaking their dream. They're starting to, when they can, when nobody's looking or whatever, they can't repress it, but they know they'll get in trouble if they do it. So Luke is basically being a hero. He's wants to save this princess who's asking for help. He doesn't understand, what it is, but then R2 takes off. So he doesn't tell his uncle, which is risky, which is also, he's going to go on this mission. So he's literally living two lives. It doesn't change his costume. It doesn't always have to be that way, but he takes off. And when R2 leaves, that's the out of the blue moment. But what happens, which is interesting, is it's because of the hero. The antagonist hero causes the out of the blue moment. Remy is in the kitchen and he sees for the first time on TV, he's in the human kitchen, and he sees for the first time on TV that Gusteau has died on a news story. And the woman whose house it is, the human woman, is sleeping. So he loses himself for a second, steps up to the TV, and he's like, oh my God, he's his idol, his inspiration, and the symbol of his dream is dead. And then she catches him. That's the out of the blue moment. But he caused it and when R2 takes off, that's the out of the blue moment. But Luke caused it because he took the restrainers off. And they have to cause it by following that passion. Luke wants to be a hero. He wants to learn more about Leia. Remy is there to be a cook in the kitchen. And so the want guide, a lot of times the want guide it could be the main character, but that's something. It could be Obi-Wan is also the want guide. So it doesn't have to be that way. Again, your story will tell you, but there's still going to be the same, aftermath out of the blue, after the out of the blue, the aftermath is showing the dream is now possible. Remy ends up in the best one in this, one of my favorite is after Remy, the out of the blue in Remy's family, and Remy's lost. They, you know, the woman starts shooting at the rats, and they flee their home. He ends up lost. He climbs up and he realizes he's not only in Paris, but he's right above his idol's restaurant. So the dream is now possible. He could be, you know, if he could figure out how, he could actually be a chef in a, you know, renowned restaurant. They still have that moment of fire, you know, with he wants to wait for his family, Remy, as opposed to going home, because that's not going to happen. So there's this question of what do I do, and then or do I go after my want? And they actually essentially say no, and sometimes they do say yes, but most of the time it's still a no, because it's you know, what am I going to do? Jump down in a human kitchen? And it's because Remy actually slips. Does he fall into the kitchen? So it's a unique way to sort of he's his passion about talking about the different, you know, people in the kitchen. He's looking down on the glass, and then he sees Linguini, who's going to be who's actually the protagonist of this movie, and Remy's the antagonist. He's yelling because he just ruined the soup and he's trying to fix the soup. You can see him, and that causes the window to go down. So his passion causes the window, and he falls down. But he essentially says no, but he ends up accepting. And the mainstream way is basically he is in the kitchen. Everybody wants to kill him, and with Luke, it's the family, his family being killed by the stormtroopers. So what's really cool about an antagonist hero is when the mainstream way comes down really hard on them in some way, whether it's you're in a kitchen full of humans. I mean, that couldn't be more risky. That's the mainstream way. Humans kill is the over, you know, which is the overwhelming sense that his father talks about. And it's also only, you know, humans and only, you know, qualified humans can be chefs. So everything's stacked against him. And that's the villain of the world, really. I mean, the character villain is actually the chef, but it's actually, you know, the philosophy too. And so Remy's there. And what happens instead of that fire that we talked about with the protagonist, when the mainstream way comes down hard on them, what happens with an antagonist hero is this belief, this who they are. They become themselves in a very profound way, as a result of this mainstream way. See, they're not flawed. There's nothing. The fire is really most of the time for antagonist heroes. The fire is being held back. Remy doesn't like being held back as a rat. He wants to be able to cook and eat, and his father's telling him, no, 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 just eat garbage. So, and Luke is being held back by his uncle because he's needs him, and his uncle, you know, doesn't want him to go off and get in trouble. So that's the really essentially the fire is a lot of times, and I shouldn't have put this here. The burn, there is no burn, there is no flaw, but that fire is what causes the antagonist to it's usually being held back. So when this moment happens, they become themselves for the first time in the movie 100%. So Remy, this is the moment in Ratatouille when Remy is surrounded by humans. He's trying to get out of the kitchen to save his ass, basically, and he sees that he's at the soup, right? That's ruined. He smells it, and he cannot help himself. He becomes himself for the first time, and it's a really magical, you know, powerful scene. And he fixes the soup, but he's standing on the top of the soup. You know what I mean? He's standing up there on the top of the thing with all these humans, but he can't help it. He becomes himself. And then Luke, when he realizes the stormtroopers could be looking for him and his family's in danger, Luke just takes off, even though Obi-Wan tells him not to. It's dangerous. He goes, he's a farmer, he has no training with swords, nothing. And he takes off like a hero. You know, he becomes himself for the first time, and he rushes back to his family, just exactly what a hero would do, and that's what his dream is. So they become what they who they truly are, and it connects to that passion. Luke's passion is to be a hero, and Remy wants, you know, makes the soup. And of course, rock bottom is where you end up. Luke's family's dead. He, you know, his whole life is turned upside down, and Remy is caught in a jar, and the chef and everybody's telling Linguini to kill him. Go take him out of the restaurant and kill him. So that's, you couldn't be more rock bottom. So they're trapped. They literally have no, they can't go back. Luke has nowhere to go back to or stay, and that's when they go off on their adventure. But it's because they follow their passion. They literally, it's really powerful when it's done right, and that's when the hero takes off on the adventure. And of course, you know, the need and the dream, all that stuff is why, you know, whether they talk about it or, you know, if it's something like with the Godfather, the need is to keep his family safe. He's obviously going to see his father to make sure he's safe and all that stuff. So there's all kinds of nuances to that. So now the antagonist hero, so that's the antagonist hero. And again, this early part of Act One is really where things are very, very kind of similar, but then this is the dormant hero. So the dormant hero is really interesting because now the dormant hero, the hero is living their dream. The world is solid. It's like the end of a movie that happened, say a movie happened before this, and the beginning of this movie, you know, figuratively, is this movie happened and the character is now, the movie's over and they're living their dream. They have everything they want. So what's really interesting is the mainstream way, all this stuff, but this is not right because the character is living their dream. They can't be in the middle. So with a dormant hero, they live literally are up here. They're happy. There's still a key event. The mainstream way is squished. It does not affect them anymore. They've overcome it. They're in line with the right way. Their belief system is in line. Their values are, they're living by their values. There's no not answering that value. So they're going through life. Now, what's happening is when you have a character who is a dormant hero and they're living their dream, what's really difficult is the one essential thing you need in stories is conflict. If you don't have conflict, you know, it's boring and you're basically not really telling a story. So how do you tell a story with a dormant hero if there's nothing, you know, there's no conflict? Is either you keep it really short, they're living their dream part of this that we're going through now, or there's another story going on. So and the main character is the dormant hero is a background character, which is really fascinating. So Michael in The Godfather, he's the dormant hero. He is living his dream. He wanted to be separate from his family. He wanted, you know, he didn't want to be part of the mafia. He didn't want to be controlled by his family. There's all these things. And he shows up to the wedding wearing, you know, his family did not want him to go to the war because you only fight for your family. You don't fight for the government. You don't fight for strangers or for the country, is their philosophy. So the key event is after the war, and Michael shows up with his war suit on, you know, his war uniform on, with his medals. He was a hero and all this. So he is you know, a hero. So he follows the legitimate side, which is the right way, and the Godfather and the mafia is the mainstream way. His belief systems, don't be like my family, you know, and so he's living his dream, but he's not the main character right now. He's a dormant hero. He's in the background. He's just a guest that people all want to come say hi to. But there's Vito talking to Sollozzo, you know, about the Sollozzo meeting and Tom Hagen and Sonny and everything's going on. That's the story. In Alien, Sigourney Weaver, you know, Ripley is living her dream because she loves the company, everything the company stands for. When everybody wakes up on when the crew members wake up and are complaining about, you know, the points and their hours and all that kind of stuff, and all that's the main storyline. And Ripley's in the background. She's just basically listening, but you can tell she's happy. She doesn't have any complaints. So she's happy with the company, and she is not the main storyline. Everything revolved around, you know, Mother tells us to stop and go look for something out there that she wants to look for, a beacon or a rescue or whatever it is. It's only when they want to bring I forget the character's name onto the ship with a face hugger on that Ripley comes in and says no. Well, that's her philosophy. That, you know, it's protocol that the company does not allow foreign objects on the ship and everything. So she's literally the warning system. So sometimes the main character, who's going to be the main character, could be the warning system. The theme, you know, is in there, is still hinted at. And the theme is usually, the theme for The Godfather is don't be like your family, essentially. And he is not being like his family. It's actually him telling Kay, I'm not like my family. That's my family. It's not me. And it lines up with his, up here, his belief system. He's already committed to his belief system. He's basically laughed in the face of his family. I'm showing up as a war hero. Kay Adams was designed to be sort of not the typical mob wife is when they're designing it. And there's a lot of details we can talk about, but then there's Red from the Shawshank Redemption. He's living his dream. He's in prison. How can he be living his dream? Well, he's institutionalized. He's been there long enough that he talks about it in the story that he won't make it on the outside. He's afraid to go on the outside. He doesn't understand the outside. It's too big, and he's become institutionalized. But under that context, he's the guy who gets things. He's got his group. He's got his life set up. He's got a life now. This is his life, all his friends and everything. So he's happy. He's in the background. Andy Dufresne is the main character, even though, Morgan Freeman's character, Red, is actually the main character. And in fact, he was nominated for Best Actor, not Best Supporting Actor. He's the main character, but he's a dormant hero. So he's in the background, and everybody thinks Andy Dufresne, Tim Robbins, character is the main character. He's not. And so and Woody's the same thing. Woody is clearly the main character, but he's living his dream. He's Andy's favorite. The only conflict is between the toys. He's just there to help the toys feel better. They're like, oh no, there's a birthday party and you're Andy's favorite. And they're just complaining, and they're all worrying about, the soldiers and everything are worrying about, what kind of toys and what's going on down there, and is in that great sequence. But Woody is completely not part of the conflict. He's basically the overseer. He's living his dream. So he's there as the leader of the toys. He's got everything he wants. So now this whole mainstream way coming down hard on the main character, usually protagonist and antagonist, happens down here just before the act break. But with a dormant hero, this happens here. This is when the mainstream way, the villain or the philosophy of the mainstream way comes down hard on the main character before the out of the blue moment. And the out of the blue moment is when their life is taken, that dream is taken. And by the way, the dressed as their dream is essentially, this is usually happens in Act 3 when for a protagonist or an antagonist character, because that's when Luke is dressed like a pilot and he's going to go fight for the rebels. That's when Remy's actually not necessarily dressed like his dream until the very end when he has the chef hat on, but he's being a chef in a human kitchen. So sometimes it's just their activities and what they're doing, freely doing. He's in a human kitchen with all his family behind him. And so that's a really cool thing. And of course, Michael's wearing his war uniform, or his military uniform, or his Marine uniform, I should say, to be more specific. But then this is taken away. Okay, so the dream is taken away when Michael's father is shot. Michael, he knows he's the smartest person in the family left, and he can see it in these meetings they're in. But Michael now knows he's going to have to go back and join the family to protect his family, which is what he needs for his family to be safe. So this is a really fascinating storyline if your character fits this, because then the aftermath is when the dream is no longer possible, as opposed to in the antagonist and the protagonist, it's the dream is possible after this, but it's been taken away. This dream now is gone, or it's not gone. What it is the dream is now sort of taken away. So now it's a new thing they have to get. So Michael's life away from his family is no longer possible. He has to go back into the mafia to help his family. In Alien, this is when Mother reveals that basically the company was sacrificing the humans in order to get the alien. And so and then I think it was Ash was trying to kill her, as for the company. Everything she thought is completely out of whack, and a dream is no longer possible. In her case, it's dead. The company, like her, and she's an antagonist. She is now going to change the world. So her, it's a little bit different, but basically in nuances, in Woody, He's no longer Andy's favorite, and that's essentially dead too, because he has to learn that he's going to share, who's the favorite. He shouldn't be so possessive and selfish. So it's a really fascinating section, and there is no back and forth really in these movies, because they essentially want to get their dream back. There's no like, oh, do I just go? There is no go back, because the dream, it's impossible to recreate. So it's impossible. And this is when all the issues, either the issues they had that we didn't know about come out, or new issues come out because of the fact that this perfect life has been taken away. So now the knee trigger in Godfather is Sonny and Tom telling Mike just to be quiet, just get on the phones, whatever. But Mike is the one who has to save the family, but they still look at him as an outsider. And for their father, for Vito, he doesn't want him to get mixed up, because he wanted him to be a senator. And so he didn't want him to be in the family. He wanted him to be one of the, as they call it, Pescinavantes, to take over to be the ones who they look for help, to get past the law. So imagine having Michael, somebody, their family. So that's a big deal. So the fire is, he doesn't like being controlled. Michael does not like being controlled. He hates it. And that's why he left. Well, now he's being controlled, and it's causing that fire. It's causing that burn in him, because his flaw is he's very pigheaded. He goes his own way, and it's essentially what causes the death of Apollonia. He does what he wants, and he does not heed warning, because he knows he's the smartest in the room, but he's very much a leader, but to a fault. But essentially his need is to keep the family safe. So that need for him, and of course Woody, every character has what they are going through anew. It's like, it's kind of cool, because it's like fresh, because of the fact that everything was taken away. And then the need guide is there, either somebody who's part of that story, or a lot of times it's the main character is actually also their own need guide. They know what they need, which is, not a dormant hero, but Ben from The Graduate is his own need guide early on. And then the want guide, this is different. The want guide is usually after this moment in protagonist and antagonist, because they're the ones that kind of, the idea of what happens gives them a chance, that dream. The dream's taken away. So essentially the want guide comes, it could come here if it's very obvious, but in The Godfather, it wasn't obvious. It's really when the hero's starting to figure out what they're going to need to do to get that dream back. And a lot of times this happens, like for instance, in Toy Story, the want guide is when Woody, this need trigger coming down, and it's not a mainstream way. Again, it's that need, it's the thing that's causing them to, like, this is Sonny's telling him he can't go see his father unless he has guards with him, and is sort of treating him like a kid, although Sonny's right, it could be dangerous. With Woody, it's just getting hit over the head with how much Andy loves him, knocking Woody off the bed, and Buzz and all the toys love him, and Andy and Woody's become basically like one of the toys that the kids don't play with more than once and throw away, kind of a thing. He's just like, his life is thrown out of whack. And that's when that fire, the new fire, in Michael's case, this is the reason he got out. So it could be a reason. What they did to overcome all this stuff is now reawakened, because now this has been taken away. So that happens, and that's when they have to make that reckless move in rock bottom. This is when Woody, he realizes he's got to get rid of Buzz. So that's when he tries to push Buzz behind the bed, and Buzz ends up outside. And then all the toys in the toy world basically say you're a killer, or you're a maniac. And Woody is no longer, he hits rock bottom. He's no longer the leader of the toys. Now he's an outcast. And it forces the character, in this case, Michael in Godfather, his reckless act is he goes, before the hospital, he goes and tells Kay that they have to put their relationship on hold, basically, or their wedding, and that she needs to go back home to her parents, and he will let her know what's going to happen. So his rock bottom is he's now completely on the other side of where he was at the beginning. He is now knee deep in the mafia. ready to make that move, and his dream is completely put on hold. And, as opposed to dead, he now needs to get back all this progress to get himself here, because he has to, for what he needs to protect his family. And this is a time when the character can get disguised. I mean, it could be their act. This is Woody going from this heroic character to basically, like a desperate, a person who almost like the movie Trading Places, where Dan Aykroyd's character goes, from this successful man to suddenly, running around with, when they finally see him, he's running around trying to rob people, and so it's showing that what happens when a character's dream is taken away. And Woody is now trying to kill another toy. And Michael, essentially, it could be their acting, or it could, how they act and their behavior. Dan Aykroyd's character obviously was wearing, was dressed in that case completely the opposite of living his dream. And Michael essentially was just wearing civilian clothes, so it wasn't really disguised yet, but there's nuances depending on your story. And that's when they make the leap. The hero takes to the first step, and go to meet his father, and that's the big thing for Godfather. Depends on the story, but so it's basically the dream is taken away, and all those moments that happen in other stories, and also the need. I talked about the need. Michael's is 100% need. What they need here is really fresh, and then obviously to get their dream back is the reason. But if you look at all the different, so you have the dormant hero here, then you have the antagonist hero. So all the stuff that happens after, all the stuff that happens here actually happens after this moment, because there is no conflict in their life, And then the protagonist hero, it's very similar to the antagonist hero, just some subtleties. They're basically really driving the story, the antagonist, and then the dormant hero where it's really different. But it's a fascinating character, the dormant hero, because that's, their whole life is taken away, and it creates a lot of amazing. It's really a juicy story when you think about it, but it's not. And they all three are very many years of debating this and writing stories using these type of characters, and also analyzing them, where these are the three main story, the main characters. It just makes it very simple. And their act 2 and 3 is the same. Act 2 and 3 is identical on all three of these, and that's it